Since ancient times, the sea has been not only a source of life and trade for humans, but also a boundless abyss of mysteries that cannot be explained rationally. For millennia, people have sailed the open ocean, braving storms, currents, and the unknown forces lurking in the depths. And every sailor knew, where the shore ends, the realm of the unknown begins. For centuries, sailors have told stories that chilled the blood, of ghost ships that appeared in the mists and then vanished like a mirage, of enormous shadows gliding underwater, following vessels for weeks without ever surfacing, of strange lights that flared above the masts in the midst of a storm, as if lightning bolts were choosing their prey. One of the oldest maritime legends is the image of the Flying Dutchman, a cursed ship doomed to sail the oceans forever. The first mentions of it date back to the 17th century, and sailors still claim to see the ghostly silhouette of the vessel in the distance, racing against the wind. The appearance of this ship has always been considered a bad omen, a harbinger of death or disaster. Even in the 19th century, when science and technology began to displace superstition, captains hesitated to joke about such apparitions. But the Dutchman is just one of many examples. Chronicles of maritime trade and military campaigns abound with accounts of mysterious ships found on the high seas, crewless. Some were ravaged by fire, but their sails remained intact. Others were afloat, but a deathly silence reigned within, as if the people had vanished in an instant. These stories stirred the imagination and reinforced the belief that the sea is a gateway to another world, where the laws of nature operate differently. The 19th century was a special time. Technology was advancing rapidly. Sailboats were gradually giving way to steamships. The first experiments with the telegraph were underway, and maritime navigation was improving. It seemed humanity was close to completely conquering the ocean. But it was precisely then that the sea seemed to decide to remind people of their vanity and fragility. In the mid-19th century, reports began appearing in the maritime press about ships being found adrift without a soul on board. Journalists wrote about the mysterious circumstances. Sailors retold these stories to each other in taverns, adding new details, and gradually a whole layer of mystical legends took shape. One of the most mysterious cases was the ship Mary Celeste, is a story that remains unsolved to this day. It was discovered on December 5, 1872, in the middle of the Atlantic. The ship was intact, its sails partially raised, its cargo intact, and its provisions plentiful. But the crew was missing. No bodies, no signs of a struggle, no explanation for where they could have disappeared to. From that time on, the name Mary Celeste became synonymous with maritime mysticism. Some claim the crew perished due to a gas leak from the alcohol cargo. Others believed it was a pirate attack, though no traces of robbery were ever found. Still others remained convinced to the end of their days that the men had been taken by forces beyond human control. This story has become legendary, but it also has a very specific historical context. To understand its mystery, one must immerse oneself in the atmosphere of that time. The lives of 19th century sailors, their belief in omens, their constant fear of storms, disease, and the vastness of the ocean. Mary's fate. The Celeste became woven into the fabric of maritime myth. This ship became more than just a vessel with a vanished crew. It became a symbol of the eternal confrontation between man and the sea, the rational and the mystical, science and the unknown. Even today, more than a century and a half later, the mystery of this ship continues to captivate minds. Scientists, historians, writers, and mystics return again and again to the Mary case, Celeste, trying to find an explanation. But each time, something elusive remains in this story, as if the abyss itself refuses to fully reveal its secrets. In this video, we'll set sail together in the footsteps of the Mary Celeste. We'll reconstruct the events, explore theories about the crew's disappearance, and delve into a realm where logic fails and imagination conjures up bleak images. Where an empty ship drifting in the middle of the ocean becomes an eerie symbol of an encounter with the incomprehensible. By December 1872, the Atlantic was filled with anxiety. Winter was coming into its own. Dark waters boiled with winds, and cold fogs enveloped every sail, as if reminding us that the ocean was unforgiving. It was against this grim backdrop that one of the greatest maritime mysteries unfolded, the story of the brigantine Mary Celeste. This ship was built in 1861 in Nova Scotia under the name Amazon, and from its very first years, its fate was marred by ominous coincidences. The first captain died on her maiden voyage. The vessel then suffered repeated accidents, and sailors began to whisper, "The Amazon is cursed." The ship was later sold to Americans and renamed Mary. Celeste set off for a new life, but as sailors say, a ship's name cannot be changed, otherwise, disaster is inevitable. In November 1872, the ship departed New York under the command of Captain Benjamin Briggs. He was a respected sailor, an exemplary family man, and a man of impeccable reputation. His wife, Sarah, and 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, accompanied him. The captain had decided that the upcoming voyage to Europe would be uneventful enough to accommodate the family. There were 7 crew members on board, experienced sailors, handpicked with the utmost care. The cargo consisted of 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol destined for Genoa. It seemed nothing out of the ordinary, a standard transatlantic voyage. But the very fact that the ship was carrying alcohol later gave rise to dozens of theories about what happened on board. The morning of December 4th, 1872, the brig Dea Gracia, en route from New York to Gibraltar, spotted a lone silhouette on the horizon. The ship was moving strangely. Its sails were half-masted, and it seemed to be drifting with the wind. Captain David Morehouse ordered the ship to come closer. When the sailors boarded, they were overcome with cold horror. The ship was empty. Neither the captain, nor his wife, nor his child, nor any of the 7 sailors were there. It was as if the crew had vanished suddenly, abandoning the ship in a hurry. Breakfast lay on the table in the captain's cabin, as if it had been interrupted mid-meal. The only things missing from the cabins were navigational instruments and a lifeboat. The ship's log was found, and the last entry was dated November 25th, just 10 days before the discovery. It contained nothing unusual. The ship was on course, the weather was tolerable, and no problems were reported. And here's where the mystery began. There were no signs of a struggle on board. There was no blood, no signs of a storm or fire. Even the cargo was still there. It seemed the people had simply vanished into thin air. Over the course of a century and a half, historians, sailors, mystics, and conspiracy theorists have proposed dozens of versions. The mutiny theory. Many believe the sailors might have rebelled against the captain, killed him and his family, and then fled. But why then didn't they take the cargo and leave the ship intact? Why did the lifeboat disappear, but there was no trace? Alcohol and explosion. Some historians speculate that alcohol vapors from the barrels could have caused an explosion, or at least a threatening bang. The crew, frightened, may have abandoned ship, thinking it was about to explode. But if so, why didn't they return when the ship remained intact? Pirate attack. Pirates were still a common sight in the Atlantic in the 19th century. Perhaps they attacked and carried off the crew, but then why weren't the cargo and personal belongings touched? Pirates usually didn't let their loot slip away. A waterspout or storm. It was said that the ship might have been hit by a rare storm, and the crew abandoned ship in panic. But again, the Mary Celeste's hull and sails showed no serious damage. Mysticism. Legends circulated among sailors that the Mary Celeste was doomed from the start. The curse of the name change, the death of the first captain, a string of misfortunes. Therefore, many believe the crew had been carried off by sea spirits. There are accounts from the 19th century in which eyewitnesses claim to have seen the ghostly silhouette of the brigantine at night, gliding through the water without sails or crew. Witnesses noted a peculiar, oppressive silence on board. Sailors on the Dea Gracia reported feeling as if someone was watching them. The cabins were strangely cold, as if a draft were blowing through the enclosed vessel. Some said they heard footsteps below, even though the ship was empty. Others claimed to smell tobacco in the air. Captain Briggs was smoking a pipe. These memories were preserved in the sailors' records and gave the story a mystical touch. After an investigation, the court ruled the discovery legitimate, and the ship set sail again. But it left a bad trail. Owners changed, but the vessel brought no good fortune to anyone. In 1885, it sank off the coast of Haiti, ironically during an attempt to organize an insurance fraud. The sailors said, "Mary Celeste has returned to the ocean where she belongs." To this day, the Mary Celeste remains a symbol of maritime mystery. She inspired writers, even the young Arthur Conan Doyle. Doyle wrote a story based on her story, but the writer only reinforced the myth, turning the ship into a legend. Scientists, sailors, and romantics still debate. What happened? Reality or a curse? A rational explanation or the intervention of the unknown? And perhaps the solution will never be found. Perhaps the Mary Celeste is not just a ship, but a symbol of how the ocean guards its secrets and reveals them only to a select few. Sometimes the ocean reminds us that it is more than just water and wind. It is a keeper of secrets, a guardian of ancient mysteries that humanity will never fully comprehend. The story of the Mary Celeste is more than just a tale of an empty ship found amid the cold waves of the Atlantic. It is a symbol, a metaphor for human life itself, where much remains inexplicable, hidden behind a veil of time and silence. We could speculate endlessly about theories: an alcohol explosion, a pirate attack, a crew mutiny, or a rare natural phenomenon. But all these explanations seem too rational for the silence the sailors found upon stepping onto the empty deck. Too simple for the strange atmosphere that surrounded the Mary Celeste. Sometimes history itself seems to resist the truth, hiding it deeper and deeper to prevent humanity from touching the mystery. Perhaps it's not about finding the definitive answer. Perhaps the mystery itself is the real point. People have always strived to unravel mysteries, from the stars to the depths of the ocean. But the further we delve, the more we realize, solving a mystery rarely brings satisfaction. It seems to remove the magic, stripping history of its mystical charm. What if the Mary Celeste is meant to remain a mystery forever? What if the ocean deliberately left us this trace and empty ship, silently gliding among the waves as a reminder of our own fragility and ignorance? Humanity is accustomed to considering itself the master of nature, but the sea has always had a knack for putting everything in its place. It takes lives, ships, destinies, and preserves them in its cold depths. Sometimes it returns to us only fragments, empty vessels, wreckage on the shores, echoing legends. The Mary Celeste is like a shadow haunting the centuries. She reminds us that the world is far more complex and mysterious than we've come to believe. Every ghost ship, every tale of the inexplicable is the ocean's whisper, its way of saying, "I am eternal, and you are only guests." And perhaps that's why we love such stories so much. They stir the imagination, make the heart beat faster, awaken an ancient fear and awe of the unknown. They remind us that the world holds more than our eyes and minds can comprehend. These are the kinds of stories worth preserving. They are like beacons burning in the darkness, reminding us that beyond our logic, knowledge, and technology, there will always be something greater, something mystical, inaccessible, and eternal. And now a question for you, viewers. What do you think happened aboard the Mary Celeste? Was it an accident, a tragic mistake, or a touch of the unknown? Share it in the comments. I'd be incredibly interested to read your thoughts. Don't forget to like this story if you found it compelling, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new episodes. Dozens more historical mysteries await us, from the secrets of great personalities to mystical events that shook the world. History doesn't always tell us the truth. Sometimes it merely opens a door and leaves us standing there, peering into the darkness. And the ocean continues to hold its secrets, and perhaps one day it will reveal them to those willing to listen.